What is up guys, I'm here back again with another Classic WoW video. So this one is a bit different and I will start making more Wrath focused content, at least for now, mixed in with a little bit of TBC Classic content and also just the general World of Warcraft content. The reason behind this is that I wanted to highlight changes that are coming in Wrath of the Lich King, so you guys can be as prepared as possible, and basically just help you with your Classic Wrath preparations, because there are a lot of people returning to TBC Classic right now, with the sole purpose of getting ready for Wrath of the Lich King. So today we are going to go over some of the changes in Wrath of the Lich King, and there's a lot of changes coming, so feel free to let me know in the comments down below if I miss out on some of them, because honestly, I haven't played much Wrath, other than the actual Wrath of the Lich King back in OG Wrath, which I think was around 2008 to 2010, so more than 10 years ago. Wrath of the Lich King for me carries with it a massive amount of nostalgia, as it was when I first started playing the game a little bit more seriously, and did more than just leveling. In vanilla WoW, I never made it to level 60, because I was too young and didn't understand the game. In the Burning Crusade I restarted from level 1 on a Blood Elf, and once again never made it to level 60, so I never saw Outland during current content. Wrath of the Lich King launched during my first year of junior high school, and towards the end of that year, I started playing WoW again, and I made it to level 80 just as the Icecrown Citadel raid opened. Wrath was the first time I ever hit max level during current content, and it was also the first time I ever did anything at max level. It was the first time I did a raid, the first time I did daily quests, and it was the first time I did a heroic dungeon, and much more. But enough about my story, let's talk about some changes that are coming with Wrath of the Lich King. The first one that I want to mention is a different class meta. Classic WoW had a melee class meta, TBC Classic had a ranged class meta, and for Wrath it's a little bit more mixed, but almost every class having a viable spec that is top tier sometime during the expansion. For the first tier, Assassination Rogues, Frost DKs, Affliction Warlocks, Arcane Mages, and Demonology Warlocks are all insanely good, with Marksmanship Hunters, Unholy DKs, Shadow Priests, Survival Hunters, and Boomkins being not that far behind. That is right, Shadow Priests and Boomkins are among the best performing specs. As we move to Ulduar, rogues are usually topping the DPS meters, usually in either combat or assassination spec, as well as warlocks, or more specifically Affliction Warlocks and Demonology Warlocks, and Feral Druids are also actually top tier during this raid tier. So warlocks and rogues are both insanely strong for the first two raid tiers. For Icecrown Citadel we have the return of warrior DPS, with Fury Warriors usually topping the DPS meters, followed very closely by Combat Rogues, Retribution Paladins, Fire Mages, and Affliction Warlocks. The one thing that I want to point out here is that there's no particular class meta, there's no focus on heavy stacking melee or heavy stacking ranged, nor is there any separation between damage over time and direct hitting classes, as Arcane Mages and Affliction Warlocks are both top tier in the first raid tier, and one of them relies heavily on direct hits, while the other one relies heavily on damage over time. The only class that is never represented when it comes to top DPS in Wrath is Shamans, and Shamans are usually brought because of their totems anyway, so if you are playing a Shaman, you shouldn't really be having a problem getting into a group. A class that is always represented in the top tier throughout all of Wrath, except for the Trial of the Crusader, is Rogues, as Assassination Rogues are top tier during Naxxramas, Combat and Assassination are top tier in Ulduar, and Combat is top tier during Icecrown Citadel, so if you are playing a Rogue you are pretty much always in a good position for raiding, especially if you're flexible enough to play Assassination during the first half of Wrath of the Lich King, then switch to Combat before Icecrown Citadel comes out. Another obvious change to Wrath of the Lich King compared to both Classic WoW and TBC Classic is that we have a new class coming, with the brand new hero class themed to Wrath, the Death Knight. This is a hero class you can make once you have a character at level 55, at least that's what I think the requirement is for it, or I think that's what it was back in the day, as I switched from a Hunter to a Death Knight as soon as I was able to, and the Death Knight actually starts at level 55, making it a very good alt for you to have in Classic Wrath. Because the Death Knight starts at level 55, and because it is a new class, you will probably see a lot of Death Knights in Classic Wrath, both on your main but definitely also on your alt, as everyone and their parents and their house pets will create Death Knight alts. Next up, the Dungeon Finder. This makes it a lot easier to find groups for dungeons, and you can queue up for random or specific dungeons of your choice. While the Dungeon Finder is usually a very hot topic, consisting of both negative and positive opinions about it, I am not here to discuss whether it is a good or a bad thing for the game overall, but what I will say is that having a Dungeon Finder makes it possible for every class to do a dungeon, regardless of their spec. In TBC Classic right now, I can't tell you how many times I have been declined to join groups because I'm a boomkin, because they always want other classes with more consistent damage output that require less mana breaks, and basically by having to manually create groups, the leader of the group can be a lot more selective of who or which classes he invites to the group, while the Dungeon Finder removes that selective element of making the group, making it way easier for less attractive classes to get into dungeon groups. This might be a negative thing for tryhards and no-lifers, but those guys will probably just create pre-mades for dungeons anyway. For dungeons, we also have a couple of the changes that I think are important to know. Number one is that the difficulty of heroic dungeons have been reduced by quite a lot from the Burning Crusade's heroic difficulty, to make it more doable for less hardcore and more casual players, especially considering you can queue into them from the Dungeon Finder. Also, there are no lengthy attunements for any dungeon in Wrath, nor is there a faction reputation requirement attached to heroic dungeons, as there was in TBC, meaning that you can start doing heroic dungeons as soon as you hit level 80, but to do that, in order to queue up for them with the Dungeon Finder, you will need a certain amount of item level. For raiding, technically not a lot is changing. We still have 10 and 25 man raids, but we now also have heroic raids, which gives even better loot and also presents a more difficult challenge. For PvP, we have a new battleground coming named Strand of the Ancients, as well as Wintergrasp, which offers a lot of different rewards and an alternative style of PvP, and the faction that has control over Wintergrasp also gets access to the Vault of Archivon. I think that's how you say it. It's a quick Onyxia style encounter, capable of dropping tier 7 loot or equivalent PvP gear. For each major patch on Wrath, one new boss is added to the Vault of Archivon, extending the encounter by one more boss and upgrading the tier loot. So at the end of Wrath you will have 4 bosses inside the vault, one dropping tier 7 loot, one dropping tier 8 loot, one dropping tier 9 loot, and one dropping tier 10 loot. As we are getting towards the end of the major changes I wanted to highlight during this video, we also have a brand new profession with the capability of spicing up every class's gameplay, almost on par with talent points, and that is Inscription. The Inscriber creates scrolls, volumes, and glyphs that he can apply to his character, or you can sell to others. The major thing for this profession is the ability to make glyphs, which can alter people's gameplay and enhance their characters. You have major and minor glyphs, which focuses on different things. Usually, major glyphs focus on strengthening your character, while minor glyphs are more focused on vanity and quality of life upgrades. For example, Glyph of Fan of Knives is a major glyph for rogues that will increase the damage of Fan of Knives by 20%, while Glyph of Blurred Speed is a minor glyph for rogues that lets you sprint on water while your sprint effect is active. For a mage, major glyphs will usually increase the damage output of your spells or reduce the cooldown of your abilities, while minor glyphs will alter your polymorph spell into a different type of animal, or it can also remove the reagent requirement for casting Slowfall. One more thing I think I should have mentioned already, but it's not too late to mention now, is the dual talent specialization. For a one-time payment of 1000 gold, you can purchase dual talent specialization, which allows you to have a second spec that you can freely activate anytime you want, and this allows you to have a tank spec even if you're a DPS main, or have a healer spec if you're a DPS main, which will hopefully bring in a lot more tanks and healers for dungeons, because they no longer have to pay a fee for every single respec, as well as redo their talents and abilities every single time. Actually, one more thing I'll mention is Heirlooms. Heirlooms make it easier to level up alts as they provide you with experience increase, plus the fact that you don't have to change them out. They scale with your level. This means that you will always have gear pieces relevant to your level while leveling, and because you don't have to change them out, you can also enchant them to become even more powerful, and enchanting your, for example, weapons with, for example, Crusader will give you the Crusader enchant all the way from level 1 until level 80. I was a huge altoholic myself during Wrath of the Lich King back in the days, and having these heirlooms is a huge boost to leveling up new alts. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That is most of the major changes coming in Classic Wrath, at least the ones that I can think of, and I wanted you guys to know about them as well. In the coming weeks I will be making videos about Wrath Classic preparations and investments to help you guys prepare for Wrath Classic. So if you are hyped for Wrath Classic, make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on those videos. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. It helps my channel out massively, and I honestly really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.